Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this live webinar with ELAINE HILIDES. This is the fifth free pre-conference webinar for the Unlimited 2015 conference. My name is Niko Leppänen. I'm the founder of Unlimited 2015. And as mentioned today, I have the pleasure to be joined by ELAINE HILIDES. Welcome, ELAINE.
Thank you. Welcome.
You are joining us from where it is? Somewhere.
Well, we're in the Peak District, which is it's a national park that's bigger than Greater London. So it has lots of hills and fields and beautiful forests, but no internet. So we've had a struggle to find internet, but it's great.
Well, it seems like you found at least one place that has.
Yes.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, ELAINE is a coach and mentor, and she's also the author of the best-selling Amazon Kindle book, Mindfulness, the Non-Diet Diet book, which, by the way, I just heard today that it's being translated into Finnish right now. Isn't that right?
Yes, Charlotta's translating it, and she's just got to edit it now. So be ready at any moment now.
Yeah, so that's exciting. That is exciting. So before we kind of dive into our topic for today's webinar, I was thinking if you could talk a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do, and that sort of thing.
Yes, certainly. Well, I'd studied NLP for many, many years, as many people did that came into the principles. And 6 years ago, Jamie introduced me to the principles. And everything just fell into place. It just made sense because I'd studied NLP till there was just nowhere else to go. And throughout all of my studies, I loved the language of NLP, but none of the techniques ever made sense to me. They always seemed a bit like Emperor's New Clothes. Everyone appeared to believe in them, but I couldn't quite see why, and I didn't have any effect from them. So that was always a bit of a puzzle to me. And then when I was introduced to the principles, everything fell into place. It just made so much sense. That doesn't mean I didn't have my questions and my doubts. So, anybody that's new to this, if they have a lot of yes, but questions, well, that's really normal. I remember it was probably about this time of year, 6 years ago, having lunch with George Pransky and keep saying, yes, but, because that's a really normal thing to do. So, and since then, I've worked with the principles solely. So I think it must have been about 4 years ago, addiction has always been quite, it's an interest of mine. I was going to say a passion of mine, but that sounds a bit odd. So food addiction, drug addiction, any addiction, alcohol. And I started working with a group of drug, alcohol, and mental health recovery. They're all in recovery. And I started a wellbeing group with those, which I absolutely loved. So I had my clients, I have all sorts of clients come to me with everything that you can imagine. But I seem to have quite a lot of weight loss clients. And I used to say, I'll write up everything that we talked about. And that's how the book came into being. So I'm fascinated by why people want the things they want, really.
Mm-hmm. And so you work, like your clients, what is it that, when someone comes to you and says, hey, ELAINE, can you help me with this? What is it usually that they...
Oh, it could be anything. It could be absolutely anything. I've worked with, I'd say, hundreds of weight loss clients. I've worked with addictions of all sorts. That could be addiction to obviously food, to drugs, to alcohol, to porn, to sex, to prostitutes. It's been a whole range of addictions. I also have a lot of people that come to me with stress and anxiety, people that have been through terrible trauma. I've had people work with me with that. And one wonderful thing about the principles is if I work with someone that's had a really serious trauma and maybe it's going to court, I have to liaise with the police, and the police know that with this kind of understanding, you don't need to know the content. So I'm not going to influence somebody to have a memory, or the police know that, which is wonderful.
Oh, they actually know that. Like they.
Oh, well, they've come to understand that. Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's really interesting. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Bring in there. So, like, this one question that popped into mind is, what are some of the? Because you say, yeah, you can work with everyone. So, let's say you have someone who's addicted to smoking, and then you have another person who's so you have one person who is addicted to smoking and would like to stop smoking, and then you have another person who is overweight and has tried a lot of things and really wants to lose weight. What are some of the like commonalities there that you can sort of identify?
Thinking. And you see, that's it, because if somebody comes to me, sometimes people come and they have a whole shopping list of things that they think is wrong. They say, I'm depressed, and I think I might be depressed because I'm overweight, and because I had a terrible childhood, and because I suffer with anxiety, and I have insomnia, and they have a whole list of things. And they think that we're going to have to work for weeks on one of them, and then we have to work for weeks on the other, and then weeks on the other. And, and I'm always saying to them, well, actually, when you realize when you understand what I'm talking about, and you realize the role that thought plays in your life, everything is swept away. Everything is resolved. So they don't need to work on one thing and work on another thing. So it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Years ago when I used to work with NLP, if somebody came to me, they would say, "Oh, I'm coming to you because I want to stop smoking." So I would kind of think, okay, what techniques will I do on you? What will I? And that actually innocently was so arrogant, because now someone comes and I just listen to them, and I know whatever they come with, it's just a misunderstanding. It's just thinking that your experience is coming from out there rather than in here.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. And it's the same with addiction and habits. It's always going to be the same. People come with habits or addiction. It's the kind of same thing. And they come with something, and they forget that their primary addiction isn't to the thing they think it is. It's to the thought.
Yeah. So is there, let me see. Well, let's explore this connection a little bit more. Okay. Because I think it's one thing to kind of hear it and go like, yeah, that makes sense, and another thing to really see it for yourself. And if we kind of direct the conversation towards our actual topic, which was bad habits and how to break free from them. So why is it that if it's only, if like you mentioned, that addictions and bad habits, behind that there's a thinking problem, if you could say that, there's a thinking problem. Why is it that it's sometimes like we are so aware of our bad habits, whatever they may be? Why is it that it feels like such a struggle to change?
Oh, absolutely. I understand that. You see, the thing is about struggling with addiction is the other evening, the film Fight Club came on. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the two protagonists are really one person. And there's a scene in the film where they're fighting. So actually the protagonist is fighting with himself. So you see them fighting with each other, and it gets really bloody and messy and everything. And then you see on CCTV that the protagonist is fighting with nothing. So he's throwing himself down the stairs, and he's beating himself up, and he's pulling himself by the hair, but he's fighting with nothing. You see, he's fighting with a creation of his own. And that's a bit like battling an addiction. You're battling something that you actually innocently have kind of made up. Does that make sense? So people have this idea that you have to fight addiction, you have to battle with it, without realizing where addiction has come from. Because, addiction is the form. So we have lots and lots of formless thoughts. and we look outside of ourselves for something to make us feel better. And that's whatever it could be. So it could be food, it could be biting your nails. You see, because addiction is just not quite having your needs met. It's a bit of a pain relief. Yeah. So it's not really asking why you have the addiction. It's more like why you have the pain. And when I say why you have the pain, I don't mean searching into your background to what may have caused it. I'm saying, okay, why are you having painful thinking? You realize you're having painful thinking if you need something to take that pain away. And once you point out that we've caused the painful thinking with our own thoughts, why would you need something to take that away? Why would you need to battle with that thing? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I was just like before this webinar, I was thinking about, okay, what is the kind of habit that I would like to get rid of? Because I wanted to bring up something like something that's sort of personal to me as an example that we could use. And the one thing that came to my mind is procrastination. Like when I need to do something and then I know I need to do it, and then I just kind of postpone it, like move it forward, whatever. And when I was reflecting on that, I realized that rarely is that really a problem, because usually I get everything done by the deadline. But the problem is that while I'm not taking action, I'm procrastinating with taking action. At the same time, in my head, I'm having this like mental battle with myself, like in the Fight Club, like exactly like that, where I'm going like, I shouldn't be doing this, and the other side is going like, well, I don't know. This isn't really two sides, but it's just like this.
Exactly. It feels like that though, because it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Procrastination, I get that totally. I think we all do that. But if you're sitting on your sofa, and it could be something as silly as, I don't know, washing up. If you're sitting on your sofa thinking, oh, I've got to wash up, oh, I don't want to wash up, oh, why do I have to wash up? Oh, it's going to be, well, you're spending more time washing up than you are, in your head, than you are actually doing it. And the other thing is that, I say, one, it's exhausting. And two, as we talk about often in the principles, it's not being in the moment. It's, oh, I'm going to have to wash up. If we just got up and did it in the moment, it would be fine. Or thought, actually, I don't want to do it. I'll do it in the morning. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that kind of habit of procrastination or whatever is a habit of thought. It's a habit of thought that leads to a habit of action. So the more that you're used to doing something, the more you will do it. It's like anything. The more you do, the more you do. Yeah. But for a lot of people, that can be quite damaging. Well, not damaging, but it can be quite time consuming. But a lot of people, their habits, and as I say, if we use habit and addiction as the same thing, those kind of things are quite life sapping, and it's such a waste. It's such a waste. You see, somebody who has, say, a habit of nail biting. The part of the brain, the reward center that they get something from. So the nucleus accumbens in your brain, the reward center, doesn't differentiate between something as innocent as nail biting and a heroin addiction. So that's why I say habit and addiction are kind of the same thing. But we believe, so even your procrastination, you think that's giving you something, maybe a bit more time, or you don't want to do it. So it's looking really to see why the habit or addiction, rather than looking at what the habit or addiction is, we should be looking at what the habit or addiction isn't. And it isn't happiness, it isn't peace of mind. Yeah. So it's like looking to see why innocently somebody is using a habit.
So is there, what I would like to do in this webinars is to play the devil's advocate sometimes.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
So well, what I want to ask you is there anything I can do to kind of get rid of it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's not to give it so much. We feed a habit literally, not only by the things we do, by the thoughts we have. You see, a habit of procrastination, crack cocaine, whatever it may be, is only generated by the thinking about it. You see, as we know now, everybody talks about we have 100,000 thoughts a day, but Dr. Frederick Luskin of Stanford University, they've proven with fMRIs that we have 60,000 thoughts a day. And the Laboratory of Neuroimaging say that we have 70,000 thoughts a day. And as we know, some experts say 100,000 thoughts a day. Well, you're using a lot of them. Try not to do the thing that you're going to have to do. So it's really noticing again that you're doing it, So it's noticing that you're having a whole head full of thoughts about what you think you should be doing, but you're not doing. Yeah, and you'll know that because the very fact that you're procrastinating, you're not sitting in a comfortable space. Because if you were sitting in a comfortable space, you wouldn't care if you did the thing or not, because you'll do it later. But you're not sitting in a comfortable space because you're procrastinating and you're beating yourself up for not doing the thing that you think you should be doing. Yeah, so it's noticing the feeling again. It's noticing that you're having those thoughts, that you're having so many of those thoughts. And I often say to clients that are new to this that a thought is a bit like a snowflake. So it comes, it melts, it goes. It comes, it melts, it goes. But if you have a flurry of snow, you're going to have a snowball. And then you're going to have a head full of those thoughts. And then by the feeling, don't you? Yeah. So the thing that you can do to stop procrastinating is notice that, oh, look what I'm doing again. Oh, look what I'm doing. Okay. Either do the thing or think, okay, I'll do it later, and keep thinking about it. Keep running the same film over and over again. Because you see, everybody in any kind of habit or addiction is looking for a feeling. So you're probably looking for a feeling of peace while you're procrastinating, wishing that you either were going to do the thing or not do the thing.
Yeah, and of course, it looks to me that it's the thing that I should be doing that's causing me this.
Of course.
This feeling of, not being in peace. This feeling of,
yes.
Anxiety and whatever, and that's
yes.
kind of.
Yes, but you see, we know with the understanding of the principles that there's always an exception. And habits and addictions seem to be one of the exceptions, because I know lots of people that have been in the principles world for years, and they still will have that block about maybe food or cigarettes, or because that's the exception, and it's not the exception because there are no exceptions. You see, the thing is with any kind of habit or addiction, again, it's always 1% physical and 99% mental. Okay, but we believe that we have this physical urge. I had a client that came to me because she wanted to eat less, and she was talking about how she used to eat when she was a child, and she said that it appeared to her that her mum existed on 40 cigarettes a day, coffee and a whiskey in the evening. And then her mum got Alzheimer's, very sadly, she got Alzheimer's, and she forgot overnight she smoked. Completely forgot she smoked. There was no physical urge to smoke. Yeah? But you see, what people forget with any kind of addiction that you've built up in the brain is that it causes chemicals in the brain, we know that, but once you stop whatever it is, so if you stop smoking, you stop drinking, you stop taking drugs, whatever, you'll have withdrawal symptoms. Yeah, you know that, we kind of accept that. I mean, even if you stop eating sugar, you get withdrawal symptoms. You'll get skin breakouts or flu symptoms, which seems really unfair when you're trying to eat healthier, because you'll get withdrawal symptoms as the body rids itself of toxins and whatever. But once that's gone, the physical hook has gone, you see. But Addiction or habit is in the mind. It's not in the physical hook. And that's why somebody can be addicted to drugs or alcohol, whatever, and then they can go for months, or cigarettes, months and months and months, and then they have a relapse. Now, the physical hook isn't there anymore. The chemical hook isn't there. It's entirely a psychological reliance on something that you think is going to make you better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And it reminded me of something, because I was listening to this audio tape by it was a workshop that Kathy Casey did with Jamie Smart.
Yeah.
And actually, on a side note, you were on that workshop. That was like 2 years ago. And there was something that they were saying about how we always do what makes sense to us
At the time, of
at
course.
the level, at the level of consciousness we are at, and how addict who injects heroin or whatever, in the end does that because it makes sense to that person.
Yeah.
At that level to do that.
Yes.
In order to feel better.
Yes.
And I think that's like, when I was listening to that, it really hit me that how, in a way, innocent people are.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's only, it really is about one misunderstanding.
It's totally. You see, people will say addiction is an illness or a disease, or alcoholism is an illness or a disease, but I really refute that, because flu is an illness, cancer is a disease. Addiction is just looking for a feeling. And if you look at addiction, if you totally look at the disease model, you're not, the disease model in isolation doesn't explain addiction at all. Addiction is really, again, always looking for a feeling. Habits looking for a feeling. Even like the nail biter will do it when they're stressed. They won't do it when they're really happy. So they're looking for a feeling, you see. And it's just the habit of thought that causes the habit. Years ago, not years ago, it's actually probably last year maybe, something happened that was a bit of a shock to me. And my first thought was, I need a cigarette. Now, I haven't had a cigarette for years, many, many years. So because of, working with the principles, I could look at that and I could laugh. I was like, whoa, where did that come from? That's a really old thought. Clearly, that was my coping mechanism at one time. Now, I didn't feel the need to go out and buy a packet of cigarettes, okay? Because I didn't feel the need to, I could see that was a construction, that thought. It wasn't an instruction. I didn't have to follow it through. And I could, it kind of made me laugh. Now, but when people don't have that understanding, that's when they relapse. They go back to something they think is going to make them feel better. Now, the fact that I wanted a cigarette at that time, I was looking for a quick fix. And any time that you're looking for a quick fix shows you that you're in the grip of your thinking. And it doesn't help to go outside to find the thing, because you've created it with your thinking. Yeah. So I had, I think it was an email or something I had seen, and it caused me, I had a reaction to it. But of course, it wasn't the email. It wasn't the words in an email. It was my thinking about the words on the email that had caused a reaction in me. So how silly would it have been to go outside of myself, to have something to try and feel better, you see? But that's what we do, innocently, that's what we do. So it is always, as you say, it's always the best we can do at the time.
Well, I have, I don't know, it's not really a counter argument.
No, go on.
But again, because I don't know why this come to my mind when during these webinars, but so you're saying that there's whatever I'm addicted to, taking, whether that's alcohol or drugs, so that doesn't, it's not the drug that gives me the good feeling?
Never. You see, The other thing, Nico, is that if you are, you know, I worked for a long time, as I say, with addicts, and I'm setting up a new group. I'm in the process of setting up a new group, and there was one particular woman that I worked with for a long time, and I'm writing a book on addiction. Her story will be through it, and she kind of demonstrated this really well as well, because you see, she was a crack addict, and she said that after the initial addiction had started, she never ever had satisfaction from crack. She never ever had the pleasure from crack. She was always chasing the dragon. She was always chasing it because she never had it. You see, what happens is you may have had something once and enjoyed it, and dopamine floods the brain. You know, dopamine, the neurotransmitter, is released at the thought of the thing. It's never released as you have the thing. And this has been proven many, many times with humans. But there was, I think it was in 2011, there was an experiment with monkeys where they had a light associated with food that would produce dopamine. But the dopamine was never produced when they actually had the food. You know, you may know the feeling. Sometimes you really look forward to something. You have pleasure from the thought of having something. And then when you have it, it's a bit like, oh, that wasn't quite as nice. But then we blame, oh, that's because he was arguing over there, or because, I don't know, I wasn't in the right mood, or we have an excuse for it. But what happens is, so if you were having a drug, the drug, your brain would protect itself because it would be flooded with chemicals. Dopamine would produce the chemicals, and also the drug would produce chemicals. And the neurons, the receptors, the brain receptors would protect themselves by, one, producing less dopamine and numbing the ends of the nerve receptors. So this means that the thing would not ever give you the pleasure it did. It's impossible. You see, that's what leads to tolerance, and that's why people have more and more alcohol or more and more drugs, or to try and get the high they had in the beginning. You see, so it can't be the thing. It's the thought of the thing, you know, because, and that's why, unfortunately, you know, addicts, they may be dry if they're alcoholic. They may be on 4 bottles of wine or spirits a day, or you know, vast amounts of drugs, and then they stop, and then they have a relapse, but they have the same amount that they used to have, and unfortunately suffer an overdose because they haven't got the protection of the receptors numbing, and that's what happens. But you see, you know, when I worked with the addicts, one of the addicts said to me that he absolutely knew what I meant, because he used to get the clucking, so everything in him would be going when he needed a fix. So his nerve ends would be going, his heart rate would be up, everything would be, he'd be sweating, and then he would buy the drug, and as soon as the drug was in his hand, everything went. So he hadn't even cooked the drug, let alone ingested it, but his symptoms went, because he knew he had the drug. The thought of having the drug settled his body. Yeah, you see, there is no addiction in a quiet mind.
So I hope he didn't cook that in the end. That he was like able to see that.
You see, you know, the psychologist R.D. Laing said there are 3 things that people are afraid of. They're afraid of death, they're afraid of other people, and they're afraid of their own minds. And if we're in the middle of a thought storm, if we're in a crisis of thinking, it seems like the best idea to go and get something to numb that thinking, to deal with the thinking, to cope with the thinking, without realizing that we are the thinker.
So there's something that I was kind of brought up. Someone asked me once that how can the 3 principles be kind of used in this kind of context? So can you talk a little bit about? I mean, yeah, you've been talking about the you know, the the thought feeling connection and all that, but kind of putting it into the language vocabulary of the three principles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the woman I talked about who had been a crack cocaine addict for many years, who was in recovery, but she said when she came across the principles, when I used to go and work with them once a week, she said that she had said she was in recovery before, but she realized she was abstinent. And when she came across the principles, then she was in recovery. Because prior to the principles, she was not having crack, but she thought she wanted it. Yeah. So she was battling again, back to the Fight Club, battling herself not to have the drug. But once she came across the principles, she realized that she was thinking she still needed the drug to calm down. And once she realized that she was in control of her thinking and it wasn't coming from her circumstances, and this particular woman, I talk about her often, and I'll just give a kind of really brief thing now, but she came to see me. She went into crack because she had two children and she had a third who died of a cot death. And that sent her into crack, she said, because she couldn't deal with the feelings. And then she went on to have another child, and they all went into care because she was an addict and she lost her home and she was on the streets for 4 years. But then she went into recovery, as I say. But she was so frightened of her feelings. She was so scared, because if you've been an addict for years, you're really using that to numb your feelings. Yeah. And the biggest shock to addicts is once they start to feel again, they don't know what to do with their feelings. And she came to see me privately because her dad was dying of cancer and she was very close to her dad. And she was terrified that when he died, it would send her back into crack. Yeah. And she'd already got a really good understanding of the principles, but we talked a lot about it, about how the past doesn't have to influence the now. So the loss of her daughter was a terrible tragedy, and naturally she was extremely sad about it. Why wouldn't she be? But the loss of her daughter had nothing to do with her dad dying. And it was okay to feel what she felt during the process of her dad dying. She didn't have to fear it because she didn't have to stay in those dark feelings all the time. She didn't have to fear feeling, because you can feel something and then you're out of it, because you have an awful feeling, you feel really, 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 really sad, really, really upset, and then you don't, because you have a new feeling. And she didn't have to feel that she needed to stay in that feeling, because if she didn't stay in that feeling, she wasn't a good daughter, she wasn't, yeah? So she kind of was like, okay, yeah, I understand that. And she went away. She came to see me on a Thursday. She went away. And that weekend, sadly, her nephew, who was 16, went to his very first rave and took MDMF, the Mandy drug, and it closed his body down. And she was sending me emails and texts because his heart had failed. He was on dialysis. And all through it, just by keep reminding her that her thoughts, she didn't need to let her thoughts run out of control. All she needed to do was deal with what was happening right now. She didn't have to go back into her daughter's death. She didn't have to think about her father. She just needed to deal with right now. And I know lots of people talk about being in the moment. It's the thing that we all talk about, being in the moment. But in situations like that, the principles it's an unbelievable help to recognize that your thinking, you don't need to let your thinking spiral out of control. You need to just be, yeah, okay, but right now, what is in front of me, that's what I'll deal with. Yeah. And unfortunately, for Claire, her nephew died. He went to the rave on Saturday and he died on Monday morning. And then her dad died in her arms on the Thursday. And this was, as I say, someone who had been in prison 3 times for addiction, and she was doing marvelously. She did amazingly well, because she allowed herself to feel what she was feeling without spiraling out of control, with recognizing that's how she felt this second, this moment, but she may not feel like that in the next moment. and she will go back to grief naturally, but she doesn't have to stay in that dark, dark feeling. She doesn't need to look for something outside of herself to take away that dark, dark feeling.
I think that's a beautiful example of how we can still, you know, just like experience life.
Yes.
And
Yes.
all the sort of colors and everything that is included in this human experience.
Yes.
And still at the back of it kind of have that knowing, that trust that, you know, in the end we will be all right.
Yes, absolutely.
Because sometimes what people say is that, oh, if nothing from the outside can impact how I feel in the inside, what's the point of doing anything? Like what's the point of doing that? And what I've come to say is that it's even better, or the experience is even more enjoyable in a way.
Yes.
When you have that, when you know that, you know, in the end, it's all going to be good.
Exactly. Yes. It's fearful and it's dark, and it's, of course, somebody is going to look on the outside for something to take away the pain if they feel like they're going to be stuck in pain. And to know that, yes, we're human, we feel pain, and then we feel joy, and then we feel pain, and then we feel bored, and then we procrastinate, and then we, you know, we are human beings. We go all sorts of ways, but we don't have to be stuck in any of those feelings. And I think that is one of the most freeing things about the principles. That we are free, that we are free to have a new thought.
And kind of like tie that to habits. I think that's like what I'm seeing right now is that, like I mentioned earlier, like things like procrastination or well, something, if we have a habit that doesn't have a direct bad impact on our health, so we're not talking about taking
severe
drugs. Yes, severe habits. When we talk about things like procrastination or maybe like biting your nails, no, something of a lesser degree.
You see,
you know, it's the yeah. Just continuing from the, it's really the all that mental battling that is the root of the suffering.
Yes, yes. And you see, with something like procrastination, even then, people believe that's who I am, or that's just the way I am.
Oh yeah.
So then they don't see any way out of it. And you know, people, many times, clients have come to me and they've said, well, I have an addictive personality. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Because you see, I think it was in 1990, I think it was the University of Texas, may have been, and they thought they'd found the alcoholism gene. So this was greeted with great interest, like, yeah, you know, we found this. And they said something like, in 5 years' time, we should be able to do blood tests to say who's likely to become an alcoholic, and then we can steer them off, blah, blah. And then I think it was 6 years later, Kenneth Bloom, the lead scientist, had to admit that they hadn't found it. There was no such thing as an alcoholism gene, because a gene, there is no one-to-one correlation with a habit. Okay, so there cannot be an alcoholism gene, there cannot be an obesity gene, there cannot be a personality gene. It doesn't exist, you see. So the more that we accept the label that that's who we are, the more that we become the label. But when we realize that actually it's not, you know, we are free to be something else. You're not confined to being a procrastinator. Because the very next day you could decide you're not going to be anymore.
I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah. But you know, as I say, I think that's what's so wonderful about the principles is, you know, leave the labels for tin cans. You know, don't keep putting the label on yourself. Oh, I just seen a question. Did you see the question come up?
Yeah. Can you talk to that?
I'll reach out. Specific types of food are things outside ourselves, and there are so many different ways of eating. So why would you tie specific types of food to using the 3 principles for weight control issues? Oh, absolutely. I don't. If anybody looks at my book, they will see that I'm not tying a specific way of eating. I'm trying to help people to see that a lot of their weight loss problems are not to do with the food they eat. You know, I'm often called last chance saloon because people have been on every diet under the sun. They've tried everything. And weight loss is rarely about the food we eat. It's about the way we think about the food we eat and about the way we think about ourselves. So I'm not tying it to one type of food at all. I don't know if that answers your question, Dr. Collins, but you're saying there's many different ways of eating as there are. And the way I eat, I wouldn't tell somebody else to eat. It's entirely up to them. I would always encourage people to eat natural foods, not processed foods. That's a given. You know, I would always encourage people to eat real food. But whether they want to eat meat, whether they want to eat dairy, it's entirely up to them. It may not be what I eat, but it's entirely up to them. I don't push one way of eating. What I'm doing with the principles is helping people to see the way they think about the food. Yeah, because it's like comfort eating. A lot of clients come to me because they feel that they're comfort eaters, which again is another label that they've given themselves. But nobody in the hundreds of clients I've had has ever been able to tell me how food comforts them. What they're often doing is tying, to use your phrase, tying, they're often associating the food with a memory. So I often use the example of 6-year-old Susie. If 6-year-old Susie falls over and her mum buys her an ice cream to distract her and to cheer her up, fast forward 20 years and 26-year-old Susie breaks up with her boyfriend and she thinks, I'll have a tub of ice cream to make me feel better, to comfort me. But what she's doing is she's not really thinking the ice cream's going to comfort her. She's actually accessing a memory of the love that her mum gave her at that time. Yeah, so it's all tied up again into the way we're thinking. Whereas if she could think, oh, I can remember when my mum bought me that ice cream and felt that feeling, because we can access those feelings instantly, she wouldn't actually need to buy the ice cream. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you, if you could just type in if you feel like that answered your question. Again, there's the about 30-second delay with Google Hangouts. So if you can just like type in whether answer the question or
I'll carry on while Dr. Collins, he or she may be typing. But you see, even talking about using the 3 principles for something is actually thingifying the principles as if it's a thing to use. All I'm ever pointing people back to is recognizing the immense power and the role that thought plays in your life. So why do you think you want that food? You know, you're thinking you want the food. It's not actually, the food has no power over you, it doesn't call you, isn't doing anything for you. The food will not give you a feeling. Yeah. So all I'm doing is pointing people back to look inside, to recognize that they are creating the feeling that they want the food to numb or to change or to cheer them up. Yeah. So you can't use the principles because we are the principles. Always.
No exceptions.
No exceptions. Not alcohol, not drugs, no addiction, no habit, no exceptions. But it's interesting that I think all of us, we don't see the principles at times. We think there are exceptions and habits, and as I say, habits, addictions are often the area that we think are the exceptions.
Yeah. So we've been going for 45 minutes now. So I was thinking, you know, the main reason why we're doing this webinar is to kind of introduce you to certain people, and those are the people who are coming to the Unlimited 2015 conference, which will be in Helsinki this September, 12 and 13 of September, so in 2.5 weeks or something like that. And so okay,
I just saw the thing. So shall I just answer that before we go?
Yeah, you answer that, and then we talk about Unlimited.
Yeah, Dr. Collins said, yes, when I read your book, I felt like you were pushing natural unprocessed foods as a fix, with the 3 principles just sort of thrown into the intro. So I'm pleased to hear this is not your current viewpoint. No, it never was my viewpoint. I will always push natural unprocessed foods because your body needs natural unprocessed foods, and I want people to have real food. You know, your body, there is no junk food, there is junk and there is food. So I'll always push that, but that isn't as a fix. That's because I want people to be the healthiest they can be. Now, the healthiest they can be physically always will have something to do with the way they are thinking mentally. So as I say, the principles aren't a fix. The foods aren't a fix. There is no fix. It's just recognizing that we are always in the effect of our thinking, whether it's to do with food or any other habit. So I hope that clears it up. But you know, if Dr. Collins wants to email me, I'd be really happy. I can chat forever about this, so I'd be really happy to. But back to the conference. I'm so excited about the conference.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really excited now that I've been listening to you. I'm like so excited that we can, because the reason why I wanted you to come to the conference is that I wanted to have someone who can sort of bring in or talk to the connection between the body and the mind and physical health and all that. And basically that's what that's what you are going to be talking about.
Yes.
So the one question that I usually ask the people the speakers who are on these webinars is that what can people expect from you at the conference?
More of the same, I expect. You know, as I say, this is a passion of mine. I'll be talking more about the mind-body connection. You know, in the Institute of Mental Health and the Institute of Drug Abuse had a research a while ago that proved by MFRIs again that somebody who was feeling the pain of social rejection felt it as a physical pain. And this is quite exciting because it proves the mind-body connection. You know, because if somebody came up and punched me on the nose, you'd expect that I would feel that differently from thinking about somebody coming up and punching me on the nose. But actually, the same part of the brain lights up. It's no different to the body. You know, all of these things are so interesting. So I'll be kind of exploring that a little bit more. But I think for somebody who's coming to the conference who hasn't been before, it will be the feeling of the conference that will be so amazing. You know, the feeling of the conference is like being held in safe hands. It's so it's nourishing and it's nurturing, and it's amazing to be in a room with people that are happy. You know, and that tends to be the case. I mean, that often doesn't happen unless there are drugs and alcohol involved. But you know, to be in a space where everybody is happy and accepts that they go in and out of bad moods, good moods, and the moods are created by their thinking. It's so nice to be in a space where everybody can see that happening, and they don't mind if they're in a bad mood. So what? They don't mind. You know, it's just another thought. And when you see people actually demonstrating, living the principles, you know, what's not to want? You know, everybody wants to feel better, and how easy it is to feel better by recognizing the power of mind consciousness and thought. So I'm really excited about the conference.
Yeah, I was just going to say that because we were both at the Tikkun conference
Yes.
in May in
Yeah.
London, and for me that was like the best party of the year.
Oh, what amazing!
Yeah, because and it was so funny because that was the first time for me.
Oh.
And when I came there the first day, and yeah, there was like about 500 people there per day, and I knew maybe 20, 30 of them.
At the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. And it was so funny because I was going around there the first day. I was just looking around, and everyone was smiling, and everyone was kind of like in such a happy spirit.
Yes.
And then like everyone, when you get an eye contact with someone, like they were like just smiling you. And I had this thought that it's like it feels the same as going to like a family
Yes.
gathering.
Yes, that's exactly what I think. It's like a wedding when you haven't seen your relatives for many years, and then you see them, you're so excited to see them.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that at the moment you don't think about yourself, or you don't think about. It's very difficult to be in your head thinking about, okay, what are they thinking about me? Okay, what is this person thinking about me?
Yes.
Or how do I look? How do I sound?
Yes.
That make a good impression. Like sometimes you go to a conference or seminar or whatever kind of meeting, and then everyone is you can sense that everyone is so concerned about how they look and what kind of impression they are giving. And then you go to like an event like this, and I'm not saying that this is something that's special about the Three Principles conference. I'm sure there are many other events where you can have a similar kind of vibe, similar kind of feeling. But for me, having been to several, events, conferences, and the like, there was something special about there, and I hope and I look forward to having that experience that again.
Oh, absolutely. And I've never ever been anywhere where that hasn't happened. I remember once many years ago, being at a small talk with Kathy Casey, and I was sitting there, and it was at Tikkun Center, and Tikkun have their own time. They're often called Tikkun time because nothing ever starts when it says, so nothing ever finishes when it says. And Tony and I had gone over to watch Kathy, to hear Kathy. And for some reason, we had gone on public transport, and it took quite a long time to get there. It took about an hour and a half or something to get there, and it didn't start when it said it was going to start. So it was due to finish at 9:30, but at 9:45 it clearly hadn't finished. And I remember sitting there thinking, now this isn't going to finish until 10, and then by the time we said goodbye to everybody, it's going to be 10:30, and then I'm not going to get home till 12, and I'm not going to sleep because I'll be getting to bed late, and I'm not going to sleep, and I have a client at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to be tired for this client. And then I could kind of caught myself, and it was, as I say, this was many years ago. I caught myself, and I was really laughing at myself because I thought, here I am listening to somebody talking about the principles, and I'm not here. I'm already tired in the morning. How ridiculous was that? And I think it's that kind of insight that people have all the time at a conference or a talk, that you kind of catch yourself in your own thinking and can see how ridiculous it is. And so, you're back, the old thing, back in the room. It's that feeling of being back and with everybody and present with everybody.
Mm-hmm. And I really like that because sometimes I think that, or I have the idea that I need to be in the right space.
Yes.
Feel the right way in order to get the most out of it, in this.
Yes.
Especially in the beginning, I went because I've been mostly been going to events that Jamie Smart has been doing, and I went to one of the vegans in London, and I went there, and I was like, I wasn't feeling particularly relaxed or quiet. things going on in my mind, and then I was going like, oh no, I'm missing all this.
Yeah.
And I had a similar kind of insight actually, because at one point I catch myself. I was like, wait a minute, like what's going on here? Like where am I?
It's really funny, isn't it?
Yeah, and the insight came when I wasn't relaxed, when I wasn't in the good feeling.
Yes.
At the moment, and still I was able to have that, and so it really doesn't matter if you, like what's going, whether you're feeling, particularly good and relaxed, and doing what some people say, the deep feeling, or whether you're just like somewhere totally else thinking about whatever.
Exactly. And so what? So what? I think it's so refreshing to know that you don't need to feel a certain way. You don't have to be a certain way, because so what? It doesn't matter. You're not in the moment, but you will be again. You're not feeling great, but you will be again. So what?
And it will be very difficult to stay in that kind of inner turmoil for 2 days. So that's the good thing, that we have 2 whole days.
Exactly. It's going to be amazing. I'm so looking forward to it. I really am. And for anybody who likes the principles and has been around it, they'll find it so interesting. And for anybody that's new, they're going to find it so interesting.
Yeah, I just realized that I didn't even, like, for someone who hasn't heard of the conference before, there's the link.
Oh, yes.
I've written in there, and I usually have this kind of pop-in thing here that I prepare, but this time I don't have one about that. So for anyone who's kind of interested in knowing more about this stuff, and who's interested in the conference, I recommend you check the site www.unlimited20%.com, where you find all the info about the speakers, the other speakers who are going to be there. And you also, if you are, you live somewhere else, you find some info about Helsinki, how to get there, and also about hotels, that kind of things. Just we put them there to kind of like make life easy to you, so you don't have to go to 20 different sites to find the info. And if there's something you are not sure about, you want to ask something, you can always email to us. You can email to me. I'm going to write my email there as well, just because I want to make life easy for you, as easy as I can make it. So you can email me with questions and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I very much look forward to Elaine, you coming to Helsinki and to the conference. I look forward to hearing from you there, and I know it will be. I don't know. I already feel like I had some like insights during this chat, and it's kind of not really formulated, not really clear to me, like intellectually, what I've heard. But there were like moments it's just like you said something, and it was like so clear to me that yes, this is how it works. And
Fantastic.
yes, and or maybe I'll take some time off and let it digest and see what comes out of it. But yeah, so yeah, I guess it's time to say thank you, Elaine, for doing this. And I know it wasn't, you weren't in the best possible location, and so thank you for making the effort to find a place to.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And I really look forward to seeing you and seeing old friends. And I really look forward to meeting new friends at the conference.
Yeah, and thank you, of course, thank you everyone who watched this either live or who's been watching the recording, and everyone who commented, and yeah, just without you, it would have been really odd to do this. So it's good to have some get some live action as well. So thank you, everyone. We wish you, God really wish you a good night, because who knows when you're watching this or where you're watching this in the world. It's night here. No, it's sort of evening time in the UK. So wherever you are, I hope you had an enjoyable experience of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico. Bye-bye.